Hey guys, my name is Bound to Divide, and today you're going to be making your very first drum beat in Ableton Live 11, and this is how it sounds. So you may have noticed my Ableton theme might be a different color to yours. If you wanted to change it to match mine, you could just go up here to Options, Preferences, and then to Look and Feel, and change the theme from Midlight, which is the default, down to Dark. Okay, so for today we're going to be working in Arrangement View instead of Session View. And to switch to Arrangement View, you can just hit Tab on your keyboard, or you can click on this little icon over here. Right, so I think we're going to be making a nice little house groove today. And for that, we're going to need a kick, a clap, some hats, maybe a tom, a crash cymbal, and maybe some snares. And Ableton comes with a bunch of samples in it already, and you can just go down to samples to find them. And the best way to find specific sound is to just use the search bar up here and type in kick, for example. So we're going to do that. Kick. And I think I want to use a 909 kick. 909 is a very famous drum machine that's been used in house music for ages, so you can't really go wrong with these sounds. And let's just narrow that down to kick 909. And then audition a few of these by clicking on them. I think I like this one that says Tune 8, so I'm going to grab that. If you don't like it and you want to use a different sound, that's absolutely fine. So now to drag it into our project, we just click and hold and drag it onto one of our audio channels. And I'm just dropping it on bar 65 because I like to work in the middle of my project. I don't like to start working on bar 1. So I've just dropped it over here. Now we can zoom in so that we can see the kick. If we just move our mouse up here till it turns into a magnifying glass and then click, hold, and drag down. We can then also drag it left and right to position it. So I'm just going to zoom in so I can see my kick nice and clearly. I'm going to place my cursor here and hit the spacebar so I can hear it. Okay, great. So first thing I want to do is just turn down the volume of the kick. Because it's so loud, it's going to start clipping as soon as we add other sounds. And when it clips, it starts creating this horrible distortion. And what I mean by clipping, if we have a look at the master channel here, and I'm just going to drag this up and expand it, you can watch this little bar over here and see the green is going all the way up to this line. That means it's at pretty much its maximum volume. If I had to boost the volume of this kick now, so it went over that, you would hear it distort. And we don't want that to happen. So I'm actually going to make it about -5, just so that we have some headroom, some space to work with when we start adding more drum sounds. Okay, I'm just going to close this master channel here. And now we need to duplicate this kick out 4 times so that we can have our typical house beat, the doof, 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 doof house beat. So we're going to be working over 8 bars. A bar is made up of 4 beats, and you can see our beats being divided into points here. So 65, 65.2, 65.3, 65.4. And then bar 2, or the second bar here, starts at bar 66. So we need to just shorten this and then highlight it and hit Ctrl D 3 times. So we have 4 kicks. Now if we play this, we have a kick drum on every beat. Now I don't like how this kick drum lasts for an entire beat. It's a bit long and it's going to take up a lot of space in our pattern. So we can shorten this by going to our sample here and then dragging this down. And if I play that now, there is always a chance that we're going to start hearing clicks because this audio file has been cut too short. So we need to create a fade out. And to create a fade out, we just click on one of these boxes over here and drag it. And then you can hear or see that the audio has faded out. So if you don't see this little box up here, it could be because you have this little switch enabled. So just make sure you click on that and turn it off. Okay, so I'm going to drag that down, and then I'm just going to delete all of these kicks. Quickly, I'm going to highlight and hit delete on my keyboard, and then copy that over 3 times and play it. Now I don't want to have to hit play every time I want to listen to it. I want it to loop around and around. So to do that, we can just highlight all of these kicks and hit Ctrl L on our keyboard. And now that should loop around. Okay, next up we need a clap. So I'm going to search here for claps, and I want a 909 clap again. So I'm just typing 909. And I'm going to drag that down onto the playlist again, onto this audio channel. And you can see that this is a very long sample. And I want the clap to be on every second kick. So if I were to duplicate this, because it's so long, there's no real space for it. I can just drag it back and that'll make the space, but just for organization's sake, I'm going to shorten this sample and bring it down to about half a beat, the same length as the kick, and then just create a fade out over here. And let me just delete this one, and I'm going to copy it over there. I'm going to click on it and hit Ctrl C, and then click here and hit Ctrl V. And let's play that. Okay, so you can see this bar is going in the red again, and it sounds too loud, the clap, so I'm just going to grab this fader over here and turn it down. That sounds good to me. Okay, so that's the kick and the clap done. Next up, we need our hi-hats. And we're going to do something a little bit different for these. I'm going to put them on the same channel in an instrument called a drum rack. A drum rack will allow us to load multiple sounds into one MIDI channel, and we can trigger them using keyboard or whatever. So if you are into finger drumming or something, then this would be the way to load up your drum samples. So we're going to go up here to drums on the left, and we're just going to close this search bar. And the first thing we see here is the drum rack. So I'm just going to drag a drum rack over here. And now you'll see it has all these spaces available for separate drum samples. So let's go and find our hi-hats. On the left, we're going to go down to samples, and we're going to click in the search bar over here and type hi-hat 909. And here you can see we have an open and a closed hi-hat. So I'm going to drag the open hi-hat onto C1 over here, and the closed one just right next to it. So now I can play and hear them by clicking this little play button. And to place them into our project, we essentially have to create a MIDI clip. So I'm going to highlight this whole section and hit Ctrl-Shift-M. And I want to place an open hi-hat on every offbeat, so between the beats or between the kicks, right here in the center. So I'm going to place one there, and I'm going to place another one there, another one there, and another one there. Now you may notice that my velocity, which is basically how hard the note is being hit, is set very low over here. So I can just drag this up so it's a bit louder. And just to show you how that sounds, if I just play this, you can hear that the velocity of the first note is a lot louder. So I kind of want them all to be the same loudness. So I'm going to just bring this up to 100. I'm going to delete the other notes and then just copy this whole section. I'm going to select here, and you can see this little highlighted bar over here shows me how much has been selected. So I want to select this entire beat and then just hit Ctrl D. So these all have the same velocity now. Okay, I think that's a little bit loud, and we can go into the drum rack and turn down individual samples using the volume over here. So we're going to click on our open hi-hat, and we're just going to turn it down a bit. And another thing I don't like is it sounds like it's a bit long for my taste. The note is lasting a bit long. So we can shorten that by creating a fade out. So I can drag this fade out knob up over here, and then you can see the volume fades out. But it's not fading out enough, so I want to shorten it too. Then to do that, I can just drag this down here. I think that sounds good to me, nice and bouncy. Okay, next up we want to add our closed hi-hats, and typically in house music your closed hi-hats land on every 16th note. So we're going to click and add a note here on the first 16th note, and I want to bring up the velocity of it so I can hear it nicely. Yours may already be loud. I think Ableton Live seems to remember your velocity preferences, so that's why your velocity may be different to mine. So just make sure you drag it up if you can't hear it, or drag it down if you kind of want it to be played softer. Okay, so I'm going to drag it up to about there, and then I'm just going to hit Ctrl D 4 times. And then I'm going to select all those 4 notes, and the quick way to do that is you can click on one of these buttons, which will select the entire row of notes. So I've just clicked here, and then I'm going to hit Ctrl D 4 times, or 3 times. And now I'm just going to play this. Okay, so that is definitely way too loud. So we can try and bring the velocity of those down. So I'm going to click here to select all of them again, and then just drag the velocity down. There you go. That sounds good to me. And now I'm going to give you a nice cool little tip to bring some life into your hi-hats. We're going to click on our closed hi-hat, and instead of the hat landing in the same place all the time, we're going to add some random pan over here. So if we turn this random pan up to 100%, we can hear what effect it has. You can hear the hats are bouncing from left to right, but that's a bit extreme and a bit unnatural. So I think a sweet spot for this would be around about 17%. So let's just bring it up to... Yeah, so that sounds good to me. And now I want to start adding a bit more groove to this, so I think it's time to add some toms. So over here we're going to search tom 909. And there's a bunch of different articulations here. We've got high ones, low, mid, and then these distorted ones. So I think I want to use one of the low ones. I like this one. So I'm going to add this using this MIDI channel over here. So previously we used a drum rack to add this, and I'm just trying to get a point across that there are multiple ways to add sounds into Ableton. Another way would be to use our MIDI channel and just drag this tom down here onto this pane over here. So just drag it. And that places it into a simpler, which is the same instrument that we're seeing on the drum rack when we click on a sample. And if we just go back here. So here we're seeing the same sort of layout as this. It's not exactly the same. The controls are slightly different, but it's the same thing. It's a sampler. It lets you load in audio files and play them as if they were a MIDI instrument. So now to add these toms into our MIDI channel, we need to create a MIDI clip. And I'm going to just highlight this section over here and hit Ctrl-Shift-M. And now if I click on this little earphone sound here, we can audition different keys here. So we can hear the tom being played at different pitches according to this piano roll. And if you want it to be played at the original pitch that you hear it over here, you need to play it at C3. So we can start placing notes at C3. And I kind of want a boom, ba-doom, boom, boom, ba-doom, boom kind of beat. So for that, I need to place a tom over here and a tom over there. So this will sound like this. Okay, that sounds good, but the velocity is a bit low, it's a bit quiet, so I'm just going to select both of these notes and drag this up. And it sounds like the tom's being cut a bit short by this MIDI note, so I'm just going to drag this out so it covers the full rest of this bar until the next kick lands. So this one's fine because we wanted to cut off before the kick hits. But I wanted this one to be a bit longer. Okay, so let's duplicate these. So I'm just going to select all of this, or we can just click here if you remember that. And I'm just going to hit Ctrl D. And now that has landed in the wrong spot. So if you wanted to duplicate out and land in the perfect spot over here, you can delete these and you can just highlight this entire section and hit Ctrl D. Then it will place it in the same position that it was over here. And now if I play this again, now we have a nice groovy drum beat. But we can't just have this beat repeating over and over again. It's going to get a bit boring. So I want to do things like create little drum fills every once in a while and add maybe some crashes. So let's do that. We need to extend out this entire section. So I'm just going to zoom out here by clicking and dragging. And I want to make this groove about 8 bars. So I'm just going to highlight with my mouse and drag this out. And I'm looking at the bottom left-hand side of my screen at where it says length. It's written over there. And over there it says 2. So that's 2 bars. We can see that it's taken up. So we need this to be 8 bars, which is that long. So I'm just going to duplicate this entire thing out, highlight it all, duplicate it until we have 8 bars. Okay, and the first little variation I'm going to create is I'm just going to remove one of my kicks over here. I'm going to hit delete. And now that just gives us a little break. So how that sounds is like this. And the next variation we're going to create is we're going to add a crash in. So let's create a new audio channel at the bottom. I'm going to click on this over here and hit Ctrl T. And I'm going to search crash 909 and drag that right in the beginning here. So just remember we need to loop this entire section by highlighting it and hitting Ctrl L. I've just turned it off by doing that, so now I'm going to hit Ctrl L again, and now the loop brace is turned on again. And now if I play this right at the end of the sequence, we hear that crash, which is very loud, so I'm going to turn that down over here. Okay, that sounds good to me. And at the end of the sequence, I think I want some snares to just play a little drum fill. So let's add another channel, and I'm going to do this with audio as well. And let's just search for our snare 909. This one's fine. I'm just going to drag it over here. And I'm going to place it so that it kind of does a little, maybe playing 3 snares at the end of the sequence. So let's just turn that down in anticipation for it being a bit loud. And now I want to place this on this clap over here. And I'm going to shorten it so that I can repeat it a few times. And I'm just going to add a little fade too. So let's copy that a few times here. Okay, so that's not really in time. I just need to shift this over here. And let's drag this one out over here. Okay, I think they sound a bit short now, so I'm just going to open these up a little bit. Still feels a bit weird, so maybe we need to not have any fade on them. That sounds much better. Okay, and maybe we should just delete that kick. I'm going to click there and hit delete. And there we go. We have pretty much a full pattern with a bit of variation. Let's hear it. Okay, my only problem is that this section feels like it should be changing a bit. So maybe what we can do is remove the 16th hi-hats in the first half and then only add them in the second half. So to do that, we need to click here and then double click on this MIDI clip and then click on the closed hats and hit delete. The problem is now we have to do that on every single one of these. So the quickest way to do this would have been to select all of these by holding shift, clicking on the first one and clicking on the last one that we want to select, and then right-clicking and clicking on consolidate. So now this has combined this all into one clip. And we can now click on this entire row and just hit delete. So now when we go from this section into this section, there's going to be a change, which is nice. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is just work on some organization here. We're going to rename our channels appropriately and also color code them. So the first thing we're going to do is to just rename the top channel. We're going to right click over here and click on rename. The shortcut is Control R. So it's always better to use shortcuts. So we're going to hit Control R. And then we're just going to name this one. It's our hi-hat. So we're just going to call it hats. And then if we want to rename the next channel, the fastest way to do that is to just hit tab and it takes us to the second one. And that's our toms. And then I'm going to hit tab again, kick, tab, clap, tab, crash, and snare. The names were already in there, but it's just good to get into the habit of renaming things because sometimes file names are a bit confusing. And then to color code it, I usually like to have my kick in like a red or an orange. And then my hats can be like a more like bluey color. And then let's make the rest of them. Let's actually drag this crash up together with the hats because they're both cymbals and make them the same color. And then the rest of the percussion can be in a green. It's a nice green here. Oops, I meant to select all of them. So just click here and hold shift and then click on the last one, right click, and then click here. And then the fastest way to color code all of these according to this, to just select all of these, click on the first one, hold shift and click on the last one, then right click and assign track color to clips. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you learned a thing or two and you can go off and make your own nice drum beat now. And I'll catch you in the next video.